In CEOP, we were no different than anyone else. So there's this rush to help in the early stage, and I think because the UK did not have a structure for dealing with this, so everyone came with best intention, that created a sense of chaos and a sense of competition. People putting their hand up to help and wanting to help, and in many instances, in my opinion, wanting to be seen to help.
The report outlines the many organisations involved and some of the problems caused. The McCanns Home Police Force Leicestershire took overall control of the UK response, but was ill-equipped to deal with such a big investigation. The force was put in charge by the Association of Chief Police Officers, a bad decision according to the report. The Portuguese were also being offered advice by Mr Gamble's own organisation, CEOP, the Metropolitan Police, the Serious Organised Crime Agency and the National Policing Improvement Agency. The Crime Stoppers charity set up its own appeal hotline. At the same time, it's understood, the Prime Minister and other ministers at the Home Office and the Foreign Office were demanding briefings. With so many contacts, the Portuguese authorities were apparently left confused and uncertain who exactly they should be dealing with in the UK.
I have no doubt that relationships from the outset with the Portuguese were impacted by it, and I think that had a long-term negative effect on the investigation. And I think to this very day, the Metropolitan Police investigation team that's engaged now are still having to manage and massage that relationship, and perhaps, to be fair to the Portuguese, mend some fences that were trodden on in the early days.
Mr Gamble wrote the Home Office report, the Scoping Review, when he was head of CEOP, the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Centre. Today, he runs his own safety advice and technology business.
Was it more than competition? Was it sort of inter-force rivalry?
I think if we look at it honestly, there were some in leadership roles who wanted to represent their organisation and be seen, or their organisation be seen to take a lead role and provide critical input in this. And that made it difficult for a small regional force like Leicestershire, who, you know, they will say they came to London, you know, walking about from agency to agency trying to lay this off. CEOP certainly didn't have the capacity or the in-house expertise to deal with it, given its size and focus. And I mean, we ended up in the long term where we perhaps should have been in the beginning with the Metropolitan Police.
Never have taken a risk. It was something that it wasn't even a decision. That's how safe it felt. It was during one of my checks that I discovered she'd gone. I mean, I can't really go into any details about that, but I'm sure any parent will realise how that felt.
Did the panic set in immediately?
Yeah, pretty much.
This is a resort that offers childcare facilities, babysitting facilities. Why then were the 3 young children left alone in the apartment while you were having a meal?
I mean, I think if you know the location here, which you've seen, what we did, I think, and we've been reassured by the fact in the thousands of messages from people who've either done exactly the same or said they would have done the same. And for us, it really wasn't very much different to having dinner in your garden and the proximity of the location.
You know, I did persecute myself over a decision to eat at the tapas restaurant for weeks, months, years, I'd say.
For years, did you?
Yeah. You know, we must, you know, why did we think that was okay? You know, obviously with hindsight. But then, as Joe said, it doesn't help. It doesn't help us, it doesn't help Madeline.
The McCanns were on holiday with a group of friends. In the evenings, they all ate together and took it in turns to make half-hourly checks on each other's children.
About 6:30, we'd all go back to our respective apartments, and then it'd be sort of bedtime routine, really.
In the evenings, the adults would dine in the resort's tapas restaurant, which was 50 metres from the McCanns' apartment.
I think that's, you know, something that is Many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare, and it is. It truly is, and it's as bad as you can possibly imagine. But you know, if all 3 of the children had been taken, it could have been even worse than your worst nightmare. And we've got to be strong for them. You know, they're here. They do bring you back to earth, and we cannot, you know, grieve. One, we did grieve, of course we grieve, but ultimately we need to be in control so that we can influence and help in any way possible. Not just Sean and Amelie, but the investigation.
On allegations the couple had sedated their children the night Madeleine disappeared, Kate McCann refused to be drawn.
You know, I'm not even going to answer that question, I'm afraid.
I mean, it's ludicrous, and you know, these sort of questions and the publishing of them are nonsense, and we shouldn't be giving them the time of day.
Lots of questions have been asked, and comfortable questions for you, about whether you might ultimately face prosecution for leaving Madeleine and the other children alone. I mean, is that a possibility that you take seriously?
We've been assured that that is not a possibility, and dealt with some time ago. And you know, what we were doing was essentially our own baby listening service. We were 50 yards away, and I've alluded previously that it was like similar to dining in your garden. And what we have done legally is well within the bounds of reasonable parenting. And you know, I understand that there's criticism, and we have talked openly about the guilt that we were not there at that minute. But what Kate and I really want to focus on is we want to get our daughter back. But more importantly, the real crime has been committed by the predator who took her.
And how do you think that you could have opportunity to get into the apartment if you were checking on the children every 15 minutes?
How often did you say we were checking?
15 minutes? No?
That's not what we've said, you know,
no?
And it's been widely reported that it was about 30 minutes. Now, that was what our checks were. Clearly, different people were going at different times.
Just talk about the decision we made, but that almost implies that you talked about, you know, do you think that'll be okay or not? I mean, that never came into it. It was a case of, well, we can eat here, that'll be ideal, the kids' evening won't be disruptive, we'll get them sorted and then we can all eat. I mean, it was simply like that. If there'd been any risk at all that had occurred to us, then it just wouldn't have happened.
We've been told that a part of the investigation centres on a bag that went missing from the apartment, a blue hold-all type tennis bag belonging to Jerry McCann. He'd been playing tennis at the complex in the hours before Madeleine disappeared.
If it's a bag of a size that could be taken away from the flat, a child, that would be of great interest to the investigating officer.
There are many inconsistencies in what the group who were having dinner with the McCanns, the so-called Tapas 9, have said in their witness statements.
And we know, because of we know we are innocent. We know that
massive police investigation and huge publicity around the world. She has not been found.
We would never, ever jeopardise the investigation.